There is a well-known saying that goes, always give the hardest job to the laziest person, because they will find the easiest way to do it. What is the best real life example to this you have seen? This is gonna get swallowed up, but this last semester I took a class from a notoriously difficult professor, known for his academic standards internationally among his peers, and his ludicrously difficult classes among any student who has ever taken a class from him. There's literally a support group on Facebook for the class I just took. We post memes about him and cry all day. The class was formed like this. 4 midterms, each worth 20% of your grade, but one gets dropped. Homework and participation, 10%, and a final worth 30%. In his class, an A is an 85%, and the homework/participation is known to be some of the hardest undergrad assignments we will ever have to do. This is where the work harder, not smarter idea came into play. I was lazy, so I decided that instead of suffering over the homework every week, then stressing out about the monthly exams, I would completely ignore the class up until the week of the exam. Figure out all the concepts on Monday and Tuesday of the exam week, then mark every type of concept and concept solution they have in the book, and study off of those from Wednesday to the exam on Friday night. One may think this was absolutely stupid, but I ended up being the only person to get a 100% on every exam. The average on the exams ranges from 48% to 71%, and he allowed me to replace the final with a short paper due to my diligence in my exam preparation. I used to process HSA claims around 10 plus years ago. One system we had to use back then was an old as hell terminal program that took 4 line items per page. That's it. For a usual claim, no big deal. Not too hard to keep track of things over 2 or 3 pages for a longer claim. Most fit on one. However, we had the dreaded showbox claims. This was the person who saved up every receipt all year in a metaphorical showbox and sent everything in once a year to empty their account. We hated them. Dozens or hundreds of line items totaling thousands of dollars. Just because you only have $500 in your HSA doesn't mean we get to stop there. If you sent in $4,000 in receipts, I got her account for it all. Totally killed your numbers for the day, and they tracked claims per hour religiously. The main issue was double checking that everything added up right when you were done entering it. At 4 items a page it took forever to tally. So, I made an Excel sheet. It was laid out so I could enter every single line, then run a macro that would calculate the needed totals and dump all the text to a text file, formatted exactly so I could select 4 items at a time and paste them directly into the terminal window from the default starting cursor position, and every field would fill in automatically. Copy, paste, next, copy, paste, next, copy, paste, next, etc etc. It easily halved my entry times, with way less work. Finding any typos was much easier. I just had to look at one column organized sheet instead of scrolling through God knows how many pages of terminal text. It was great. I showed it to my manager, so the rest of my team could use it. She was horrified I would use something like that, as no human was double checking as they went along. This despite demonstrable improvements to my error rates on large claims. After I started using it, she ordered me to stop using it and forbid anyone in her team from automating any part of their job at all. I kept using it for all of the 2 months I stayed there after that. I had some of the highest claim per hour numbers and lowest error rates on her team. I never developed any more tools for them. Fuck her. I work for a major software development company, but the work I do is primarily electrical/mechanical work to maintain one of the massive data centers that keeps the internet alive. The company creates all of its own tools for literally everything instead of using off-the-shelf products. The issue was that, even though we made our tools, we had a different tool for each portion of a given task. One task would require 5 different tools that didn't talk to each other, just to complete the admin portion. I was tired of having to navigate each tool individually, so I decided I was going to make them talk to each other through a different tool. I taught myself the necessary languages and spent my free time for a few weeks creating my product. The end result was a tool that I could manage 100% of my daily administrative work from one tab in a web browser, resulting in admin time being cut to about 10% of what it was, and reduced the amount of missed work due to some automated functions that would highlight things that didn't get done in time. I did all of this as a glorified electrician with no previous experience, even though we employed 10k plus software engineers. Suck it, nerds. Then I realized that software development is a bit of a passion of mine, and now I'm trying to pivot careers. Edit. Since we have a salty boy below, I'd like to make it very clear that I don't actually believe I did the coding portion of their job better than they could. What I did have was specific knowledge on the best way to view information, and a desire to not wait around for them to institute feature requests that were buried in their backlog. Since doing my work, it has put into perspective just how important some of the features I built into my product were, and they have since pivoted their entire project plan to focus more on integrating the features I created into our actual tools. I didn't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. I've got mad respect for anyone who manages to create anything useful out of code. I used to have to make contracts for every person I brought on a traveling training team. I said contracts was stupid and made them into one, sent it to our lawyers, and they approved it. Still took me too goddamn long to update each contract with different names, pay rates, and dates. Went on r/Excel and found out how to make a mailer list, and hours of work takes me 10 minutes. I didn't tell anyone this though, so I just take my time. Then I had to make floor maps for restaurants to send to the company that puts them into our scheduling program. Well, all of our restaurants are cookie cutter, so I just use Paint to piece them together rather than make all of them each time. I'm fucking Picasso with Microsoft Paint. Then they wanted me to use Excel to keep track of training teams. One of my coworkers used Smartsheet and loves to teach people things. So I jump on Smartsheet with her and she shows me around. Way easier and easier publishing it so that people can see the teams but not mess up any info. Using forms to not have to ask them 30 questions that auto-populate my Smartsheet. Sharing it with payroll so they never have to reach out to me. Templates on Outlook. Tons of stuff. I basically took a lot of my job, said fuck that there has to be an easier way, asked on Reddit or just googled things, and spend maybe an hour learning something that will save me many hours in the future. I always tell people to just Google things. They say I don't know what to Google, and I say whatever your problem is, just Google it the exact same way you'd say it to me. Then when they Google Excel thing that makes this do that, they are shocked that they find their answer. Worked as a cashier during the holiday season back when I was 16. The supermarket was selling drinks by the boxes, and at that time, we only had barcode scanners that was at the front of the computer. No gun type scanners existed. I was lazy and didn't want to carry boxes up to the scanner. So I politely asked my customers if I could carve out the barcode from their box to scan and keep. Some agreed, some didn't want to, but eventually I managed to amass all the barcodes needed, labeled them and kept them in a file for easy reference. Apparently some other cashier got green-eyed at my smart move and complained to the chief cashier, who promptly lectured me on bullshit alert, how it's dangerous for me to scan such barcodes as I might scan the wrong things. She told me to throw it all away and carry the boxes like I was meant to. I mean, I was young so I could, but the other cashiers were older and some were elderly and needed the customers themselves to help carry the boxes to the scanner. But whatever, I guess jealousy trumps common sense. There's a story that I've heard a few dozen times about a toothpaste company that had accidentally sent out cases of their product that had a few empty single boxes of toothpaste. The company had endeavored not only to rectify their mistake, but to ensure they did not repeat it. They hired an engineering company that designed a scale and alarm shutdown system. If an empty carton was passed down the production line, klaxons would be triggered, and a full stop would initiate until the offending box was recovered and an all clear had been entered into the computer system before production could resume. The company paid through the nose, but was ultimately pleased with their failsafe, and the engineers patted each other on the back. A few months pass, and the engineers returned for quality control. The toothpaste company reported zero margin of error for weeks. Turns out, one of the minimum wage hairnet types on the assembly line didn't appreciate the sound of klaxons or working with computers. So, he or she had aimed a large fan at the production line before the scale that blew the lighter empty cartons off of the conveyor belt. Problem solved. A few years ago my mom was tasked with fixing my grandparents' toilet while we were visiting for the holidays. The toilet reservoir was constantly filling and running, and thus flooding the bathroom because the boy arm wasn't lifting high enough from the water in the reservoir to switch off the water flow. My mom, who is normally a very practical person, had been tackling the issue for hours. She was pretty distraught, thinking we would have to order a new boy arm, maybe even a new sensor, or switch and pull the whole assembly apart to replace everything. She was planning out a trip to Lowe's and pricing things out when I walked in. I took one look at it and bent the metal arm the boy was attached to down, so the arm had a slight upwards curve. The boy still reached the same level in the reservoir, but registered on the sensor as higher because of the curve in the arm. Problem solved. Rangers lead the way. I watched it dawn on her what I had done, and she just looked at me like I had a third eye and said, "You little fucking shit. I've been getting my ass kicked by this thing for 4 hours and you fix it in 4 fucking seconds?" She was very happy I saved her from more work and spending more money. She calls me her little toilet engineer from time to time. I work on aircraft. It's mildly demeaning. Edit. And now my most upvoted comment is about a shitter I fixed once. Perfect. In high school I had an absolute ass of a teacher. He gave me a binder that had the name, address, phone of every student in the entire district, including the names of all of their siblings. I was to type this in, even though it was already printed out. I asked if it was already printed, why was I typing it? He said they paid an outside firm a bunch of money to do it, but the state pulled the funding and the firm refused to provide the files, and now the district didn't have the money to do it again, but they still needed the data. I was super pissed about how tedious of a job I was given and bitched to no end. He knew that I was the winner of a typing contest and agreed that this one project would be my entire grade for the semester. If I could manage to get it all entered into the computer by the end of the year, I'd get a passing grade. If not, I'd fail. After about 2 hours of data entry, I decided it was a bullshit job and downloaded OCR software, scanned the whole thing in, and spent a day or two correcting scanning mistakes. My plan was to spend the rest of the semester goofing off and pretending to work. That lasted about a week before the teacher caught on. He then proceeded to start giving me more stupid, tedious work and said the previous deal was now off. I found out that part of the reason the deal with the consulting firm ended badly was his fault and told him I was going to the school board with this information. We decided on a new plan. My grade for the semester would pass as an A, but I had free time to take on other classes the teacher offered. I used this free time to complete 1.5 other courses. TLDR. My laziness got me 2.5 course credits in the span of time I would have gotten only 1.